Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 1984 thriller and cult classic, Body Double. Now, this is a film that I think I saw years ago, but it has been so long since I saw it last that I didn't remember a single thing about it. So, for the longest time, I was genuinely really curious about giving this one another look because of its reputation, because of its status as a cult classic, and all the good things that I heard about it. And since I was watching a lot of erotic thrillers, I decided to definitely pop this one in. And I'm glad I did because I absolutely adored this movie. I loved Body Double. I loved this film. I thought it was absolutely spectacular. This is one of those rare films to me personally in this genre that's as close to perfect as you can get. I didn't really have that many problems with the film at all, so really this video is just going to be me gushing about Body Double for about 20 to 30 minutes. Anyway, continuing with this, with me gushing about Body Double, this is one of those movies that critics assaulted when it came out. Majority of critics did not like the film. They thought it was offensive. They thought it was misogynistic. They thought it was just absolute trash. There was a couple critics who didn't feel that way. One of them was Roger Ebert, who gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars. But most critics hated this film. They absolutely just savagely attacked this movie and its director Brian De Palma. And Brian De Palma, when he talks about this movie, he even openly discusses the fact that opinions on the film have changed dramatically over the years. So much so that people forget about the backlash that the film got, the controversy that it got when it was released. Nowadays, people are like, what controversy? It's a classic. But back in 1984, there was all this controversy, and a lot of people were just slamming him and slamming the film, and so on and so forth. So it just goes to show you, you can release a film and have a particular negative reaction from critics and not necessarily do that well in the box office because Body Double wasn't a hit. It cost $10 million and only made $8.8 million in the box office. And you still end up making a movie though, despite all of those things, that lasts the test of time. That, that is one of those films that has a long lasting impact. So don't put too much weight on initial reactions to a film. Those can change over time, and sometimes they don't. But in the day and age of Rotten Tomatoes, where a lot of people look at the Rotten Tomato score and determine, oh well, it's got a low rating, so I'm not going to go see it. Maybe it'd be a good idea, not to just focus on that too much. Anyway, getting back to the film and my thoughts on it, Body Double is directed by Brian De Palma, and he was inspired to make this film because he used a body double extensively in his film Dressed to Kill for A.G. Dickinson. There was a really sexy shower scene, and it was a body double. It wasn't A.G. Dickinson who was naked. So he came up with this idea that what if I incorporated the Hollywood body double into a thriller plotline? And it was an ingenious idea. It really was. And the title does not only apply, in my opinion, to the traditional Hollywood body double, but it also applies to how the characters in the film, the Indian and the main character, Craig Wasson's character, Jake, are following this woman around. They are her body double because they're constantly in the same place as she is. And I love that when you have titles that can actually have multiple meanings throughout the film. It's not just, it's just the title of the film. It's actually a part of the plot line. And it's a part of the film's DNA. Now, it also features a script by Brian De Palma and Robert J. Averich. And this is a really great script. Has some really lovely, just hilarious, witty moments where it's just skewering Hollywood and the. I think that's another reason why it got attacked by critics, because it's poking fun at Hollywood. It's poking fun at the source of income for a lot of these critics, and so I love that about the film though, where it's just poking holes through the pretentiousness of acting and everything, and the audition process, and the acting coaches who think they're gurus. I love that about the film, and it's got a nice dark um, sense of humor that is also rather appealing to me. There's some moments that are legitimately good in terms of comedic timing, especially when Melanie Griffith's character, the porn star Holly Body, if I could fucking say her name correctly. I guess I'm too hot and bothered just thinking about her. I can't even think straight. For good reason. I mean, Melanie Griffith in this movie is a total sex pot. Like, uh, it's like it really is kind of hard for me to just think about her in this movie without getting all hot and bothered, so to speak. So, Holly Body, there's a great moment where Melanie Griffith is talking to this woman who apparently had worked with Scully at one point in her career, and insinuating that she's also a porn star. And she has this great comedic timing where she's just talking to her and telling her what she's gonna have to do to get the part in a certain porno film. Um, but this woman, of course, is completely oblivious to the fact that she's talking about porn. So that was a great moment, and there were nice moments like that throughout the film. But it's not a comedy. It's definitely more of a serious thriller with some genuinely sexy scenes in it. I mean, some of the sexiest scenes I can think of. There's some sleaziness to it too because the lead Scully he's a peeper. He really is. But unlike some other portrayals of these voyeurs on film, Craig Wasson's character of Jake Scully, he's got a heart to him. There's something good there. It seems like he's not totally corrupt. And the fact that he's doing these things, he's peeping, doesn't automatically make him, to me personally, a completely unlikable character. He has unlikable traits, but he's not an unlikable character to me because he's got enough going for him that you care enough about him. You want him to get things together. You want him to turn his life around and get away from the peeping and find a worthwhile relationship. It seems like he initially did have that with his girlfriend, who, in the beginning of the movie, ends up cheating on him. And now he's left without a house and a girl. And that's what leads to him house sitting for this actor who keeps following him around, but he doesn't really notice it that way until much later. He just thinks it's just coincidence they keep running into each other, this actor named Sam. And Sam ends up giving him this opportunity to house sit in this like really lavish house in LA, which is actually a real bit of architecture. It's a very interesting, intriguing bit of architecture too. I mean, it's called the Chemosphere. It's an ultra modern house. It's almost like the Space Needle. It was built in the 60s apparently, and you have to get on an elevator to get up there. And I just love the fact that De Palma and the production designer and the scouting people, they chose that. They chose the Chemosphere because it just adds so much more intrigue to this film that's already very intriguing. And so he's house sitting for Sam in this really rich, ultra modern apartment. It's actually a house, but it might as well be an apartment because it's like a loft, but it's just on this like tower with a sphere on top of it, with windows all the way around it, and that's what leads to him peeping because Sam shows him this view of this woman who appears to be showing up like clockwork every night, doing this scintillating masturbation routine. with her top open and everything, and so on and so forth. And that ends up getting him hooked on her. And now and then once he sees that it seems like there's some mysterious figure that's following her around, he thinks it's up to him to try to help her, to try to save her. He already saw her getting abused by her husband, so he's created this fantasy in his mind that he's going to play the part of the romantic lead and get her away from the abusive husband and save her from the killer and so on and so forth. There are a lot of aspects of this film that are a film within a film. The beginning of the movie is very unique. It starts out panning through a graveyard set of a vampire movie called Vampire's Kiss, which stars Jake Scully, Craig Wasson's character. And Craig Wasson also plays a character who's claustrophobic. So in the beginning of the film, he's in a coffin dressed up as this punk glam vampire, which really does look like De Palma is borrowing some makeup notes from the character of Beef from a film he did in the 70s called Phantom of the Paradise. There's there's a lot of similarities between the makeup and the clothes, trying to think of the right word, was a clothing design of that, the costume design of that particular character. And this one, and the vampire in Vampire's Kiss. And so it opens up rather comically, where this glam vampire turns to the camera, bares his teeth, and then freezes, which is absolutely not what a vampire is supposed to do in a coffin. Can't have a claustrophobic vampire. And so that leads to some dissent among the rest of the cast, as well as the director for Vampire's Kiss, who's played by Dennis Franz, who was intentionally just trying to be Brian De Palma, and Brian was okay with it. He was okay with it. He even lent him one of his shooting jackets. So this director Ruben ultimately lets go, fires Craig Wasson because he's a claustrophobic vampire. We can't have that. So yeah, so it opens up in a way that you don't expect. It's like it's literally a film within a film, and then you have the titles, which are the titles that would appear in a vampire movie, not a thriller like this. They got blood dripping on them and everything. So I thought that was just a very unique a way to open the film. It was just really such a wonderful way to grab an audience and really keep them there. And not only does it, have just unique, interesting opening credits and stuff like that, but it's just a very unique, interesting film. And just the way that De Palma directs everything in this movie is such a sight to behold. This is a master craftsman. This is a master craftsman at work, just finely crafting every single shot, having everything placed in the right place, just being really creative with things. The way that he shot the claustrophobia scenes, I absolutely loved. I thought they were just simply stunning, because he tilts the camera at an angle, and then he zooms it in and out, and it just creates this really unsettling look and feel to these scenes, and does a really amazing job recreating what it is like to be claustrophobic, to what it's like to feel like you can't move, and things are too big for you, and the walls are closing in on you. It's what, and he went above and beyond. I mean, there's a scene near the end of the film where he shot essentially. You had the actor who ultimately plays the killer in the film, Greg Henry's character. He had him, and he had him looking down at this grave that was being dug for Holly Body and for Jake Scully, and it looks like he just like stretch out the film or something. But really, what happened is he built this set, and he had like Greg Henry. He just stared down into like this. It was like a 50-foot tall, well, not 50 feet, but like really, really high fake grave set, and he just has him stare directly into like this pit, which is just multiple feet high. Uh, it's the kind of stuff you don't see anymore. You do not see films like this anymore. Not only because of the subject matter, but because of the fact that there is no CGI. There's no green screens. They're shooting it on location. They had a location guy who went out of his way to find unique locations in LA. That's where he ended up finding things like the chemosphere and the reservoir that's used in the climax. This is the kind of stuff you don't see that much of anymore. Yeah, and even like other aspects of going back to the story and the script and the direction. There's some, like I was mentioning some darkly comic moments earlier, but there's even more darkly comic moments. Like one in a sequence is really suspenseful and tense, where the Indian has an auger drill and he's going after Deborah Shelton, and the cord for the drill is pretty short. So in what looks like it's gonna be like the kill scene, the cord unplugs from the wall, and then he's got to improvise. So I thought that was a great little bit of comic relief, so to speak, and a nice moment of levity. And despite that, though, she still gets this poor woman, this poor object of Jake Scully's desire, and for good reason. I mean, Deborah Shelton is gorgeous in this, is Gloria, and she gets drilled, and not in a good way. It just gets drilled right through the stomach. You don't actually see it. A lot of critics apparently accused the film of actually showing this long phallic-looking drill going through her, but you don't actually see it. All you see is the drill going through the ceiling and blood dripping down and dripping down on Jake as he's trying to fight with the dog that has prevented him really from being able to save her. Well, not only that, I mean, he really should have just called the cops. Like the policeman who came over afterwards, he said you could have just, instead of following around, you could have just called the cops, and she would still be alive. And he's got a point. He really does. Detective Jim McLean, played by Guy Boyd. And of course, you have the body double aspect of the plot, and this is where we kind of spoil some things. But when you talk about this movie, you have to mention it. It is absolutely brilliant. I mean, I really did not see that coming. That the woman who's doing this scantily clad masturbation routine that Craig Wasson is peeping at in the top floor, you know, well, there's only one floor, peeping at through the windows of the chemosphere. It's not actually Gloria. It's porn star Holly Body. And she was hired by Sam to do this routine, so Craig Wasson would end up becoming infatuated with her. So then he would end up witnessing her murder. So then Sam could have somebody who could be a witness for the murder of Gloria, and he could get away with it. And the other twist is that this craggy, creepy-looking Indian, which I knew, honestly, there was something up with this character, because it didn't look real. It definitely looked like somebody was wearing prosthetics, and that was it. And that's what makes that work for me. Because initially I was like, this is unrealistic. But that's the point. He's wearing prosthetics. So it's supposed to look like it's prosthetics, because it is prosthetics. So that just, in my love of makeup effects and everything, that just makes me love the film even more, because it's like, oh, cool. Like, it uses prosthetics in a way like this that's incorporated into a murder, where this guy's just gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna wear lifts, I'm gonna wear a fake chest and teeth and makeup and a hairpiece, and I'm gonna act like I'm this craggy Indian, and then I'm going to use that disguise as essentially as my alibi, so I can get away with murder. It's not a bad idea, if you think about it, as long as you don't get caught. But yes, eventually he does get caught, and he makes the mistake of trying to get Craig Wasson to act and get over his claustrophobia, because he eventually does, and just in time to essentially thwart the killer and save the girl, Holly Body, and save his career, really, because now he's no longer claustrophobic. And it doesn't seem like he has any really any more of a desire to peep anymore either. So this is kind of an old school review where I'm a little bit all over the place, but it's kind of how it's going to be with this movie, because there's so many things about it that I really like. Going back to Brian De Palma's story and his script, the film kind of has two different parts. So the first part deals with Jake and his obsession with Gloria and following her around, including one really great sequence in at one of I think it was the first time that the Rodeo Drive Galleria actually was on film, and it was a great location to shoot in when it comes to this type of film, where you have this voyeur aspect where the lead is following this woman around, and you keep seeing her from behind, and so on and so forth, and she's walking up these escalators, and he's going up this escalator, and there's all these different levels to this mall, so to speak. So that was a really inspired shooting location. Another one was at this series of like apartment complexes on the beach, and of course the chemosphere, where the house that Jake Scully is house sitting for. And then you have stuff like the sequence on the beach where she's eventually, like, what happens is Scully warns her that she's being followed. He helps her out. They share a passionate kiss, and the camera does a 360 twirl, and it was choreographed, and they were on a turntable, and then they put it behind a green screen or a blue screen. And apparently De Palma doesn't like that, and audiences laughed at that scene because they thought it was too over the top. I love it. I think it's another unique aspect of the film that just makes it such a joy to watch from a technical and cinematic perspective. I loved it. I thought it was a great scene. And it ties in later with the moment when he shares a passionate kiss with Holly Body, because the sequence between Gloria and Jake kissing and twirling around in a circle is perfectly intercut with the sequence with him kissing Holly Body. And I also thought the approach there was brilliant, because it was showing visually his fantasy, because that's not really how it happened. It was more sloppy. It was more, she didn't really want, she was saying no. She was like, I can't do this. I don't want to kiss you, blah, 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 blah. But he was still doing it. So it's one of those things where he was in it, but she still kind of liked it, but then she kind of did. It wasn't straight up rape, but it was getting there. It was close. It was to the point, where you can have a passionate kiss, but it not being rape. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you see the film, you know what I'm talking about. And so this is his fantasy. His fantasy is that it looks like it's something straight out of a romance or a pulp novel, but really it's something more sloppy and nowhere near as romanticized. And that ties in too with his moment with Holly Body later in the film. And that's what I'm talking about with this being two different parts, two halves that seamlessly get cut together in that one sequence. So first half is him dealing with his obsession with Gloria, following her around, trying to save her, and failing. The second half is him realizing what's going on, realizing the murder plot. Things are starting to unravel, figuring out the body double, and developing a new obsession with Holly Body, played by Melanie Griffith. And then also uncovering the murder plot and who the murderer is and stopping him and so on and so forth. So I like that aspect. I like the fact that the film is kind of split into two halves that come together into a rather seamless whole. And during one of those halves is a just deliriously entertaining, just joy to watch porno music video for Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Relax. I was not expecting that. You actually see Frankie, you actually see the band in this sequence, which seems like another surreal scene straight out of Scully's mind. I don't think this actually happened. Like, I could be wrong. Maybe it actually was shot for this porno in the film, but it looks like it's so stylized. It's so similar to the sequence on the beach with Gloria and the kiss that it makes me believe that this is just another one of his fantasies. Because it doesn't make much sense for him to masquerade as a porno producer after that to get the attention of Holly Body. I think this was just him straight up imagining what it would have been like if he got the role for this porno. I don't think he actually got the role. I don't think it actually happened that way. I think it's just all in his head. And I'm probably not the only one that thinks that. But man, that scene is just fantastic. I love it. It's great. It's fucking it is so risque and sexy. Like it's just one of those, like, it just oozes and drips sex appeal. It's just a great scene. And I will never think of that song Relax the same way again. Apparently that was supposed to be, that entire sequence was intended to be the music video for the song on MTV, but it was too risque, it was too sexy for MTV, and they were like, nah, we're not going to do that. That's too much. So they ended up shooting a different video and aired that instead. And if you've seen the film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it is too hot for MTV. It definitely is. So yeah, definitely had to mention that when talking about this film. There's another cool scene too where you actually get to see Tower Records during the 80s. So you see like shelves and VHS and Beta and laser discs and stuff, and that was a lot of fun. And for me as a collector, so that was really cool. I always like those moments in these older films where you get to see what it would have looked like if you went to a video store back in the 80s. So now that I've sung enough praises about De Palma, the story and the direction, I want to mention the cast. Craig Wasson, I thought, was perfectly cast. He was great as Jake Scully. This character, like I was saying, who's likable but has a lot of warts. I can't really see Kurt Russell in this role, which is rumored. There's a rumor that he was considered for it. I can't see him playing this character. I don't think he's wimpy enough, believably wimpy enough to pull that off. Because Jake Scully is kind of a loser. So I don't really see Kurt Russell as that type of character. Greg Henry, he plays Sam Burchard, who is ultimately the film's villain. Melanie Griffith plays Holly Body. Now, originally she wasn't the first choice. It was going to be an actual porn star, but the studio found out about it and were like, no, we're not casting an actual porn star in this. And Tatum O'Neal, Jamie Lee Curtis, Carrie Fisher, Brooke Shields, and Linda Hamilton, they were all offered the role, but for multiple different reasons, they didn't take it or weren't able to. And I can't see any of them pulling it off in the same way as Melanie Griffith did, so I'm totally fine with Griffith getting in the role. And this role was so big for her that even critics that didn't like the movie, they thought she did great. And so that kickstarted her career and resurrected her career and enabled her to get roles in films like Something Wild and Working Girl, which is good because I like Melanie Griffith. I've always thought she was a decent actress, and so it was nice to see her get a breakout role like this that would end up enabling her to continue to have a career for a multiple, not necessarily a multitude, really just multiple years after this film's release. Deborah Shelton, gorgeous. Apparently she's dubbed by actress Helen Shaver, which is interesting. I wonder why she was dubbed. Dennis Franz plays the director Ruben, who is just Franz making fun of Brian Palma. And you have a few other actresses and actors in this. I mean, you have Barbara Crampton, who plays Craig Wasson's girlfriend, who cheats on him in the beginning. This was apparently her first on-screen role, and you get to see all of her assets. Definitely one of her biggest assets is her just voluptuous breasts. So you get to see those in all of their glory early in the film. You also have Slavica Jovan, who plays the sales lady at the Rodeo Drive store. I knew she looked somewhat familiar. I was like, where the heck have I seen her before? And the reason why she looks familiar is because she's Gozer. She's Gozer in Ghostbusters. So this is Gozer without makeup. So that was really cool to see her. Rob Paulsen is also in this, the voice actor, who you've heard his voice in a ton of different things. He's the cameraman for a porno film in this. So that's another interesting sort of cameo role there. But yeah, this is a great cast. I mean, the main bulk of the cast is Craig Wasson, Greg Henry, and Melanie Griffith, and Deborah Shelton, and they are all just really, really great. And I can't talk about this film without talking about Pino Donaggio's just spectacular, stunning, unbelievably awesome score. I love this score to death. This score is scintillating. It's a joy to listen to. It just enhances so many aspects of this film. This film is a prime example of one of those movies where you take out the score, the film isn't anywhere near as special. The direction is still slick, it's still masterful, and so is all the other technical aspects of the movie. But you take away the score, you take away the heart of the film. And yeah, I love this score. I love this score by Pino Donaggio. It's definitely one of my favorite scores of his, for sure. Especially the one that plays during the masturbation scene, so to speak. It's a lovely score. It really is. It's a great score to listen to. And not only in that, I mean, it just creates this sort of ethereal feeling to things. And then when moments need to be more suspenseful or intense, the score ratchets those scenes up another notch. Just a great score. The cinematography by Stephen H. Burham is also really fantastic. It's definitely a top-notch work, so to speak, when it comes to cinematography. Especially the sequences at night and the sequences of the chemosphere and the other buildings across, and during the sequences inside the houses and stuff like that. It's just a very slick-looking film. Editing by Gerald B. Greenberg and Bill Pankow is also excellent. There really weren't any moments in this with the editing where I was like, man, that's a bad edit. No, everything about the editing in this was really good. Really good is putting it lightly. Like I said earlier, it's excellent. It's excellent editing. And the pacing I thought was pretty good. It's 114 minutes, but it never really bored me. It kept me interested and intrigued throughout the entire running time. I think it's a well-paced thriller. I don't think it's too slow, and I don't think it slows down. I don't think it has a moment where I'm like not interested in what's going on. I guess it's a little bit of a slow burn, so it's not like non-stop thrillers. But it's one of those films though. It's such a pleasure to watch unfold. Just to watch De Palma's direction, to watch the way he's setting up his shots, it's just a great film to watch and look at, that you're just engrossed in it. You become completely enveloped in the movie on a much deeper level than just a superficial one, because you're just so enamored by the film. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say about the movie. I pretty much talked about every aspect of the film that I wanted to mention that I absolutely adored and loved about it. Discussed at length why I think it's a great movie. I mean, you have an intriguing character in Jake Scully, who's not like your typical lead, who's got his own issues, but it's not enough to make him a completely unlikable asshole. You have characters like Holly Body that are also really interesting because you don't really see a porno star in this type of light. Deborah Shelton's character, Gloria, your typical rich, spoiled girl, but there's something more to her. There's this sadness that you see permeate throughout this character and her sequences. The killer, who just gets a kick out of playing some sick game with people and, wants to get people to act. Love that. Definitely a total skewering of Hollywood and the pretentiousness of acting and acting coaches, and a wonderful homage to Hitchcock, to films like Vertigo and Rear Window. And it's just one of those films that, as every scene plays, the more and more I fell in love with it. And then when it ended, with its really clever use of the body double, on film, and just showing you exactly what it looks like shooting a scene with a body double for a nude scene would look like on film, and showing it cut together. It's just one of those movies that it clearly has so much passion behind it when it comes to the direction and the story, and it just comes off so well. And you could tell that there's a beating heart behind every single thing in this movie, and it goes a really, really long way, because easily you could have had a film like this. It would just been sleazy, it just would have been trashy, and would just been forgettable. But that's not what happens at all. It's a movie that is the antithesis of forgettable, and it's sleazy, but it's sleazy in a way that doesn't make you feel dirty afterwards. It doesn't make you feel like, oh man, I feel guilty. No, it's sleazy in a way that's stylish and slick. So, yeah, I've talked your ear off enough about this movie. If you haven't seen Body Double, definitely give it a watch. Hopefully, Columbia or Sony or some other company releases a US Blu-ray of Body Double. It deserves it. I think some company did it recently, called a Choice Collection or something, but I think it was a made-on-demand release by Sony. Do a wider release of this, because it deserves it. There's an Indicator Blu-ray, but it's pretty expensive. I'd like to get it someday down the road, but for right now I'm okay with this DVD, because surprisingly this is one of those DVDs that still has some pretty good picture quality for an older DVD, and it has a lot of featurettes on it. It has 4 different featurettes on it that are actually total, I think, over an hour in length or close to it, and they're all really detailed and have features interviews with Brian De Palma, Melanie Griffith, Deborah Shelton, and the actor Gregg Henry. No Craig Wasson, though, which I thought was a little disappointing. Would have liked to have heard Craig Wasson's thoughts on it. You also have Dennis Franz, who's interviewed in it as well. But yeah, there's a lot of interviews in that. It's a good series of featurettes. If you like the film, definitely pick up the Blu-ray or the DVD, because the DVD has the featurettes, and the Blu-ray has them too. I think the Blu-ray also has like a commentary track or something, and a few other things. So anyway, I don't know what else to say about it, except if I were to rate it out of 5 stars, I'd give it 5 out of 5. I seriously love this movie that much. I can't think of a single thing about it that I really had an issue with. Even the little moments with Jake Scully being kind of a creep, I was alright with, because it just makes his character more interesting. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I highly recommend this movie. If you haven't seen it, give it a watch. If you have seen it, but it's been a long time, give it another watch. And as always, I will see you later. See ya.